The photo captured everything Marcia Turner had been waiting for. A late summer afternoon, sunlight pouring through the dogwood trees, her silver curls pinned neatly under a lace veil, and the man of her dreams kissing her cheek beneath a white floral arch. She posted it on Facebook with trembling fingers, heart pounding like she was 20 again. The caption read, "I've finally found my soulmate. Love knows no age. I feel reborn." Within minutes, the likes rolled in. Old co-workers from the hospital, church friends, even her high school lab partner left hearts and congratulations. Everyone wanted to believe in a happy ending, especially for a woman like Marcia. She'd spent years alone, raising a daughter, caring for strangers on 12-hour nursing shifts, holding her grief quietly after her first husband passed in his sleep. But that day, she looked radiant, whole, like she'd finally been chosen. Her new husband, Darnell Whitman, younger by nearly a decade, stood beside her with his hand proudly resting on her waist. He looked at her the way men in romance movies do, attentive, grounded, claiming her in front of the world. Except not everyone was celebrating. Beneath the sea of hearts and emojis was one comment that stood out like a bruise. "Careful." It came from her daughter, Layla. Marcia didn't respond. She didn't want drama. Not on her day. She sipped champagne that night, scrolling through the comments on her post, smiling at the affirmation. "You did it, girl," she whispered to herself in the mirror, adjusting her pearl earrings. "Forever starts now." She didn't know that her forever had less than 24 hours to live. Marcia Turner hadn't been touched by love in over a decade. After her husband, Gerald, died from a sudden stroke at just 47, she threw herself into survival mode. Bills, double shifts at the hospital, raising her daughter Layla on her own. There was no space for candlelit dinners or romantic getaways. Her wedding ring had collected dust in the top drawer of her nightstand, buried under church bulletins and expired coupons. She told herself she didn't need anyone. But every birthday came heavier than the last. Every Sunday after service, when couples held hands in pews, she'd go home to frozen dinners and silence. Her friends told her to try dating apps. She tried. Once. That ended with a man sending a shirtless photo from his bathroom mirror. She swore never again. Then came Darnell Whitman. He wasn't supposed to be anything more than a patient. She first saw him limping through the rehab wing after a motorcycle accident, a steel rod in his femur and a mischievous grin that didn't belong in a hospital. He called her sunshine from day one, even when her scrubs were soaked in other people's blood. What started as light banter over medication rounds turned into long talks in the staff break room. He told her about his broken childhood, about sleeping in the back of his car for a year. He said no woman had ever treated him with dignity until her. He looked her in the eyes when he said it. That was new. When he was discharged, she thought she'd never hear from him again. But 2 days later, he showed up outside her job with a bouquet of yellow lilies and a handwritten letter. "I don't have much," he said, "but I know what I want. You." Marcia laughed then, called him a fool, but her chest burned the whole drive home. By month 3, they were exclusive. By month 5, he moved into her house. By month 9, he proposed, kneeling in the hospital parking lot as she got off a night shift. It was fast. Maybe too fast. But for the woman who had waited so long for love, it felt like fate had finally caught up. The day Marcia became Marcia Whitman, the Georgia sky was soft and blue, like God had personally blessed her second chance. The wedding was in her own backyard, simple, intimate, just how she wanted it. White folding chairs lined up in rows, a rented arch wrapped in silk flowers, and a Bluetooth speaker playing Luther Vandross. Marcia wore a champagne-colored gown she'd found on clearance at Macy's. Darnell wore a grey suit that looked a little too expensive for someone who still hadn't gotten a job. Layla, standing stiffly in the second row, didn't smile once. Marcia noticed. Of course she did. But she told herself her daughter just needed time. Time to adjust. Time to understand that her mama could still find happiness at 52. After all, hadn't Layla said for years that she hated seeing her alone? Still, the tension was there, like static before a storm. During the vows, Layla shifted in her seat, her arms folded tight. During the toast, she whispered something to her best friend that made them both go quiet. Darnell, ever the charmer, gave a short speech. To the woman who taught me what home feels like, I promise I'll spend the rest of my life protecting her heart. People clapped. Some cried. Layla didn't move. After most guests had left and the cake had been boxed up, Darnell pulled Layla aside near the back steps. His voice low, smile tight. Darnell, I know you don't trust me, but this ain't about you. It's about your mother, and I make her happy. That should count for something. Layla stared straight through him. Layla, don't think I don't see through your act. You touch one hair on her head, I'll burn you to the ground. Marcia caught only the tail end of it. Enough to see the look on her daughter's face. Enough to feel the weight she was trying to ignore settle back into her chest. That night, as she soaked in the tub alone, Marcia replayed the entire day in her mind. Layla's silence. Darnell's smile that never quite reached his eyes. The way his hand gripped her hip just a little too tight when they posed for pictures. But she shook it off. She was married now. This was her new beginning. She just had to believe it. That night, the house smelled like garlic and butter. Marcia stood barefoot in the kitchen, plating shrimp linguine while Nat King Cole played softly in the background. She had slipped into the ivory silk robe Darnell bought her 2 days earlier, still had the tags on it. It hugged her curves gently, the way she remembered feeling when she was young and confident and untouched by disappointment. Darnell came downstairs in a black t-shirt, fresh from the shower. He kissed her on the cheek and poured 2 glasses of red wine. For a moment, it felt like the world had stopped spinning. Just the two of them, alone, finally building something that didn't feel like it could break. Marcia, raising her glass. To fresh starts. And to being chosen. Darnell, clinking his glass. To forever, Mrs. Whitman. They laughed. She leaned into him. The way he touched her face felt real, gentle. But the way his eyes wandered, distant, distracted, made her wonder if he was already somewhere else. After dinner, Marcia said she was tired. She cleaned the plates anyway, humming as she wiped down the counters. Darnell sat at the table, scrolling through his phone, smiling to himself. Marcia, lightly. Hope you're not already bored of me. Darnell, without looking up. Nah, just soaking it all in. He kissed her forehead before she headed upstairs, told her he'd be up in a bit, wanted to clear his mind. She didn't ask why. By 10:15 p.m., Marcia was curled up on her side of the bed, the Facebook photo still glowing on her nightstand screen. She read through the comments again, pausing on Layla's one-word warning. Careful. She sighed, locked her phone, and turned off the lamp. She never woke up again. Downstairs, Darnell walked into the laundry room, pulled the breaker switch, and stepped into the dark, not as a husband, but as a man ready to disappear into someone else's life again. Forever had already begun to rot. The call came in at 9:03 a.m. My wife. She's not breathing. I think she slipped in the tub. There's blood. Please, you need to come. Darnell's voice was frantic. Believable. Too believable. When first responders arrived, they found Marcia fully clothed, her wedding band still on, lying in an empty tub. No water. No bruising consistent with a fall. Her head rested oddly against the porcelain, almost placed. The silk robe she wore the night before was bunched at her waist. Her face was pale, lips slightly parted. Detective Carla Jennings arrived shortly after. A 20-year veteran of the Macon PD, she had seen enough to know when something didn't sit right. And this felt rehearsed. Jennings, to her partner, whispering, "Why's she in her robe and slippers if she was taking a bath? Who puts on perfume before slipping in a tub?" Meanwhile, Darnell paced the hallway, wringing his hands like a man auditioning for grief. Said he found her like that when he woke up. Said maybe she was light-headed. Said she must have fallen after turning the power back on. Except no one turned the power back on. The entire house was still dead. Layla arrived 20 minutes later, mascara smeared, face blank with disbelief. Layla, to the officer at the door. "Where is he? Where's that son of a bitch?" She ran past the tape, past the gurney, and nearly collapsed at the sight of her mother's lifeless body. Marcia looked peaceful, disturbingly so, like someone had tried to stage serenity. Layla, choking through her tears. She just wanted to be loved. You bastard. You couldn't even let her have one night of peace. Jennings crouched beside the tub and studied Marcia's neck. There, faint but unmistakable, were bruises shaped like the edge of a towel. Compression marks. No bleeding, no fractures. Just pressure. Gentle. Deliberate. It wasn't a fall. It was a goodbye someone else had written for her. By noon, Detective Jennings had seen enough to put Darnell on a short leash. The scene wasn't adding up. No signs of a struggle. No slip. No scream. The power had been manually shut off from the breaker box, yet Darnell claimed he'd woken up to find Marcia in the tub. If that were true, how did he make the 911 call from a phone that should have had no charge and no light? She pulled the call logs. It had been made from a fully charged device. She noted it. Quietly. Meanwhile, Layla gave Jennings her phone, full of texts, voicemails, and screenshots. Marcia, text, 11 days before wedding. He keeps talking about the insurance paperwork again. I'm going to update it. I guess that's normal. Layla, response. You're changing your will for a man you've known 9 months? Mum. No. Marcia had changed the beneficiary on her $500,000 life insurance policy 3 days before the wedding. Darnell was now listed as sole recipient. The paperwork had his handwriting in the witness section. Jennings turned to Tech. She subpoenaed neighborhood camera footage. At exactly 2:12 a.m., Darnell was caught pacing outside in a hoodie. At 2:14, the lights in the entire block went out, because someone had pulled his house's breaker, causing a brief surge across the shared grid. At 7:43 a.m., the Facebook photo, the one of Marcia beaming in her wedding dress, had been posted. But metadata from the file showed something strange. The upload came from Darnell's phone. Jennings, to her partner. She was already dead, and he posted a picture of her, to sell the fairy tale. They found his fingerprints on the power box. They found his browser history. How long does it take for bruises to fade after death? And life insurance payout timeline Georgia. But what clinched it was the silence. The house was spotless. No broken lamp. No glass. No frantic signs of a husband who found his new bride dead in a tub. It was too clean. Too quiet. Like someone had time to prepare. And Darnell Whitman, or whatever his real name was, had cleaned up death like it was routine. Darnell Whitman didn't exist. Not in any database. No birth certificate. No high school records. No DMV history prior to 2021. He was a man without a past, and that, to Detective Jennings, was the loudest red flag of all. She ran fingerprints through the national database. 2 hours later, a match came back. Marcus Lee Thompson, 42 years old, born in Tampa, Florida. A sealed juvenile record. A trail of civil suits in multiple states. And one disturbing pattern. Women, older than him, found dead or mysteriously missing within a year of meeting him. One of them, Deborah Atkinson, 58, widowed, diabetic, was found dead in her apartment in Tallahassee in 2014. Cause of death. Complications from hypoglycemia. No autopsy was performed. Her will had been changed 3 weeks prior. Beneficiary? Marcus Thompson. Another, Joan Bellamy, 61, retired schoolteacher in Alabama. Found face down in her garden in 2018. Ruled as an accidental fall. The only witness was her live-in fiancé. Name on police report? D. Whitman. Each time, Marcus disappeared before authorities could question him. Changed names, cities, identities. And now, here he was again, standing in a borrowed suit, calling himself a grieving husband, claiming Marcia Turner simply slipped. Jennings, to Layla. He's done this before. Your mom wasn't his first, but she's gonna be the last. Layla's hands trembled as she stared at the documents. Photos of women with kind eyes and gentle smiles. They all looked like her mother. Soft, trusting, hopeful. And now, gone. She leaned forward and whispered, "You're not dealing with a con artist. You're dealing with a serial killer in a wedding band." Jennings nodded. She already knew. The man who called himself Darnell Whitman hadn't just broken Marcia's heart. He'd hunted her, and he almost got away with it. Again. The trial began 8 months later under a grey Georgia sky. The courthouse was packed. Locals who had once commented heart emojis under Marcia's wedding photo now sat on wooden benches, their eyes heavy with shame, curiosity, and dread. Marcus Lee Thompson, known to the public now only as the groom killer, sat expressionless at the defense table in a crisp suit too expensive for someone with no employment history. He wore the same practiced smirk that had once fooled Marcia Turner. This time, it didn't work on anyone. The prosecution was relentless. They laid it all out. The fake identity, the insurance change, the timing of the Facebook post, the staged crime scene, the coldness of his voice on the 911 call. Then came the pattern. Deborah Atkinson. Joan Bellamy. Women who died alone after rewriting their lives for him. Prosecutor addressing the jury. This wasn't about love. This wasn't even about money. This was about control, about a man who learned how to blend into the empty spaces of vulnerable women's lives and consume them. Marcus never looked up. Layla took the stand on the 3rd day. Her voice was steady, but her hands curled into fists as she testified. "Layla, my mom wasn't stupid. She was tired. She was lonely. And he made her feel seen. That's what makes this so cruel. He didn't just take her life. He made her believe it was finally beginning. When the defense tried to suggest Marcia may have taken her own life, the entire courtroom seemed to recoil. Jennings' forensic breakdown of the bruising patterns and the time of death data obliterated the claim. Then came the final blow, the life insurance policy, signed just 72 hours before her death, complete with Marcus's handwriting as the witness. The jury took less than 4 hours to return. Guilty. first-degree murder, fraud, identity theft, aggravated deception. Marcus Lee Thompson was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As he was led away in cuffs, he turned once toward Layla, smiled like it was all a game, and said softly, "She died happy. That's more than most get." Layla didn't blink. She simply whispered, "You'll rot alone." And this time, he would. Marsha Turner's Facebook profile is still active. The wedding photo, the one where she's smiling beneath the arch with sunlight in her hair and false promise on her lips, remains pinned to the top. People still comment. Some leave prayers. Others leave rage. You deserved more. I hope he sees this picture every night in his cell. Rest easy, Angel. Layla never took the photo down. She thought about it, especially after the funeral. But something in her said no. Let the world remember what betrayal looks like with a bow tied around it. Let them see how charm can kill. Let them know that predators don't always wear masks. Sometimes they wear tuxedos and call you baby. She launched a non-profit in her mother's name, Marsha's House, dedicated to helping older women spot financial predators and romantic scams. The tagline reads, "It's never too late to find love, but it's also never too late to ask the right questions." And every seminar starts the same way, with a projection of that wedding photo. Because Marsha's story didn't die with her. It became a warning, wrapped in white lace, posted for the world to see. Every so often, Layla drives past her mother's old house, the one with the peeling shutters and the dogwood tree that still blooms every spring like clockwork. The white floral arch from the wedding still stands in the backyard, crooked now, vines curling around it like fingers trying to forget. She hasn't had the heart to tear it down. Sometimes she parks across the street and just watches. Windows dark, porch empty. The silence still feels loud. She remembers how her mother glowed that day, how her laugh seemed lighter, younger. It was the first time in years Marsha had looked like she believed in something again. And that's the part that breaks Layla the most. Not the murder, not even the trial. It's that her mother died believing she was loved. That even in her final breath, Marsha probably thought forever had just begun. Layla once blamed herself for not stopping the wedding, for not screaming louder, for not saving her. But now she speaks in rooms full of strangers, widows, single mothers, women holding on to hope like it's the last piece of themselves, and tells them, love isn't real if it demands your will, your wallet, and your silence. Real love doesn't need you to be blind. Her mother gave everything, her trust, her heart, her name, to a man who was never real. But from that ruin, Layla built something that is. Something honest. Something strong. And she promises herself this. Marsha Turner may have died wearing a wedding band, but her legacy will never be wrapped in silence.